we need to talk about Tinkerbell. The image of a sparkling, pretty, mischievous but ultimately kind little fairy with magical powers has truly muddied the waters. Even the word fairy is troublesome. It is so closely aligned with this image of Tinkerbells that the experiences of fairy creatures by generations of our ancestors have become lost in this fantasy. In my earlier catalogue of videos, I deep dive into particular types of fairies, including the ones rarely spoken of, the dark, dangerous fairies, those who will and have done us harm. Some of these creatures are just as terrifying, clever, unpredictable and powerful as Skinwalkers and Wendigos and Bigfoot, and these aren't tales from the past. Encounters with these unpredictable creatures happen every day. It happened in late September 2020. My best friend Quinn and I were up late, which had become the norm for us during lockdown in the pandemic. We're both adult women with demanding professions, so having that amount of free time was kind of surreal for us. We'd taken up hiking and exploring our local region and particularly loved walking at night. Well, this one night we were out on our normal route. It was roughly 2 or 3 a.m. when it happened. I'd discovered this spot weeks before and walked it many times already. There was a narrow path that had a little wooden bridge that crossed a small patch of wetlands. On this path, just across the bridge, is an old worn bench. I'd often stop on that bench and sit and check my messages, as human contact was pretty limited during the early part of the pandemic, but the whole area felt warm and abuzz with energy. I just felt good being there. I'd often practice grounding too, which is walking around barefoot in the area nearby that bench. It was such an inviting place. I always look forward to reaching it, and I savoured my time there. A week or so before that night that Quinn and I set out, I decided to invite some other friends there too so that they could share in this experience, and that's when things started to go wrong. This one day I took 3 of my friends along the narrow path and across the little bridge. I was having a great time, but one of my friends, Eve, began feeling very uncomfortable and dizzy. Well, I brushed it off at first because I was so excited to share this place with my friends, and Eve was often one to get a little spooked, but my other 2 friends felt fine, and Quinn was there as well. Out of the blue, we saw 2 wisps zipping across the tops of the tallest grass and then nosedive straight down into the earth. Oh, we were all blown away. It just seemed like such a magical place. Next thing, Eve took off her shoes, just as I had, and began walking to the edge of the wetlands, hoping to recreate, I think, what I had felt days earlier. But instead, she began shaking uncontrollably, and tears were just running down her cheeks. She was having some sort of horrible reaction. Then she took off. She started to leave. Well, I stopped her and I asked what was wrong, what was going on. And she looked at me and she said, "How could you bring me here to such a nasty, effed up place?" Well, to say she was upset would be an understatement. So we all left right then and walked back to my place. Well, I was pretty upset too. It wasn't how I'd imagined our evening to unfold, and I just couldn't understand it. So fast forward a week, and it was 2 a.m. or so, and Quinn and I were out walking the familiar route. We were coming up to the little bridge, and both feeling a little tired, we'd had planned to stop and sit on the bench up ahead. We didn't even make it to the first board on the bridge before we caught a glimpse of what was sitting on the bench ahead of us. It was a glowing human figure made of pure white light, just sitting on our bench. Strangely, what seized my attention was that this thing of bright, pure white light didn't cast any light around it. Its outline almost looked like old school TV static. It was difficult to even focus on it as it lacked any real features, not even eyes that we could see. I stopped dead in my tracks and I grabbed Quinn's arm. "Are you seeing this?" She looked me straight in the eye and whispered, "Yes." An overwhelming sense of terror just hit us both. What the hell was it? My mind was racing. I wondered if it was something people called Fae. I'd never given their existence much thought, but this wasn't anything pretty or pleasant. We felt a darkness, a sickness just looking at it. And then I felt it looking at us. I felt that we had carelessly stumbled upon something that we were most definitely not supposed to see. And I wondered, is that how Eve felt? Had she wandered too close to it the week before? We backed up and got out of there. I've tried going back to that place several times to try and face my fear, I guess, but every time I have, that sense of panic and fear just overwhelms me to the point of panic attacks, and it lingers long after. I don't normally suffer from any form of anxiety. I'm just at a loss. I know I saw it. Quinn saw it and felt it too. I have no answers on this. All I have is questions. I'm so glad this woman shared her experience. It takes more courage than it may appear at face value. There is the obvious risk of ridicule from peers and keyboard warriors, of course, but we mustn't forget that there is always a risk of angering the Fae by talking about it too. This was a great example of what can happen when we venture onto land that the Fae consider their own. When she went alone, quietly and respectfully, it was a pleasant experience, an inviting, mesmerizing place. But when she returned with others, the welcome they received was menacing, frightening, even sickening. They had overreached their welcome. Perhaps one human can be tolerated, even welcomed as a curiosity, but more than one is an intrusion, to be driven away. The nature of Fae can shift in the blink of an eye, and for reasons that we don't understand. That's why caution is always the best approach. I can understand her wish to go back and to make things right, but if it were me, I would stay well away and never return to that place. If you enjoy my videos, please consider becoming a YouTube member. YouTube members receive fun benefits and exclusive content and help me to grow my channel too. For more info, just check out the link in the notes below. Now, here's a short, sharp story from a guy who learned a valuable lesson about Fae. I can tell you exactly when it happened. It was the 27th of December 2019 between 5:45 and 6 p.m. Well, there's a hill that I had to walk up after work to get to my home from the station. And at the top of the hill, there's 2 Victorian lampposts. On the right, there's a couple of houses alongside a steep embankment, and to the left, there are woodlands, mostly oak and beech. Anyway, at the lamppost closer to me, I could see a figure struggling to climb up it. At first, I thought it was a big rat, but as I got closer, I could see it was something with a humanoid shape, with 4 limbs and hair on its head. I'm in absolute shock at the sight of it, and a bunch of correlations flash through my mind. Then it rests on Faerie. Only not the sparkling ones, the real ones, dark, ugly and mean. The ones my father's family, who are Irish, always told me about. So I just start laughing. It's a bloody fairy. The absurdity of me seeing one in England, well, I thought it was hilarious at the time, and I pissed myself laughing as I walked along. Then, as I was almost at the lamppost, I literally shouted at it, Go piss off somewhere else, you stupid fairy, because, well, I'm not sure what I was thinking, but I guess it was just pure disbelief. 2 seconds later, this clap, bang, explosion goes off right at the back of my head, and it knocks me face first smack into the ground. Well, I scrambled up, my ears were ringing, and I just started running to get the hell out of there. I had no bumps or injuries on the back of my head, nothing to show for it, but the sheer force of it, I just can't explain it. But I know this, never piss off a fairy. That's good advice. And to be honest, that guy got off lightly. That could have been so much worse for him. So here's a few things to know. Fae are almost always found in nature. They can and do look like anything. They should always be avoided if possible. But if not, like you're literally walking past one, don't initiate contact and always treat them with respect. You know, fairy is such a blanket term. It misrepresents a vast array of creatures by grouping them all together and implying that they're merry and playful. Nothing could be further from the truth. Next time you hear the word fairy, I hope you'll stop and think twice. Remember, it's a strange world. Keep your eyes and ears open and be kind. Cheerio!